Alright folks, this is for Dendrology class. I'm not going to be using all the jargon that we would normally use in class. I just want to point out some characteristics that jump out at me. Okay, so here we go. This is bush honeysuckle, and you can see the leaves are simple leaves, but they're oppositely arranged on bush honeysuckle. So that really jumps out at me. You can see the underside of the leaves are pretty velvety. Alright, so be sure to check that out. And then if you look at the bark on bush honeysuckle, it's striped. Okay. Alright, here we have Gingko. Simple leaves, but very unique. You're not going to confuse this with probably any other tree. Very thick leaves, extremely thick, darker on top. The underside, paler green below. But notice the fan-shaped, or we were just talking, maybe it's shaped almost like a whale's tail here. And you can see the wavy margin at the top of this leaf. Okay, wedge-shaped at the bottom, a wavy margin on top, definitely fan-shaped, and you can see how the veination is parallel and kind of fans out. Alright, here we have Devil's Walking Stick. This is going to be our largest leaf for class. And it's actually bipinnately compound, sometimes tripinnately compound, so huge leaves. I mean, they'll get quite large, even 5 feet in length, so just gigantic. Whereas hickory and ash, you know, they have pinnately compound leaves. These again, bipinnately to tripinnately compound, just gigantic compound leaves, but alternately arranged. If you check the rachis, you can see here on the stem these prickles that are very sharp prickles. Each of the leaflets are coarsely toothed. Okay, coarsely toothed. But for the most part, this one's going to be an easy one to ID, especially with the prickles and just these giant tripinnately compound leaves. Here's a favorite tree for a lot of people, especially in the south, southern magnolia. Southern magnolia has almost a fake leaf. It's so thick, it's even plastic-like, but very glossy and smooth. Very dark green on the top, the underside. If you flip it over, lots of rusty pubescence. So that red or rusty colored pubescent underside gives kind of a velvety feel to the touch. Very glossy and smooth above. Simple alternate leaf arrangement should be an easy one. Here we have simple leaves alternately arranged for Sweet Bay Magnolia. And like southern magnolia, fairly thick leaf, glossy and smooth on top, and then underneath somewhat velvety and paler green below, or on the underside. You can see the smooth margin, the oval shape here, and then somewhat rounded rather than coming to a sharp point at the apex, but somewhat rounded apex as well. So kind of a perfect leaf. This one's not completely developed, but they'll generally be 4 to 6 inches in length. Alright, here we have bald cypress. It is not an evergreen. It's actually a deciduous tree. A lot of people think that they're evergreen, but you'll notice these leaves or leaflets are almost like needles. They come out 2 ranked, so from each side, and then really feathery in appearance. So feathery like leaves of bald cypress. Should be pretty easy. Here we have black willow, and black willow has a very unique leaf shape, and you'll notice the finely serrate margin on these simple leaves that are alternately arranged, and then they come to a very long and sharp point here. So very long, kind of elongate and streamline leaf here. Pretty unique. I don't think you'll confuse that with any other leaves. Here we have Paw Paw. Paw Paw has long leaves, typically 3 to 6 inches long, somewhat narrow. This one's not fully developed yet. but you can see it comes to a sharp point. Very thick leaves. The veination is extremely prominent, really stands out on Paw Paw. If you crush Paw Paw leaves, it smells like, they smell like green pepper. So green peppers, but very, very thick, almost tobacco-like leaves. Here we have Paw Paw again. Just want to show you this one because it's more fully developed, more of the typical length here. This one might be about 5 inches in length, but just want to point that out. Here we have Privet. This is Chinese Privet. Privet is oppositely arranged on young stems. It'll be very obvious. On the older trees, it's not so obvious, but you'll notice the simple leaves oppositely arranged. Perfectly oval in shape. Alright, darker green above, lighter or pale green below. A smooth margin, kind of thick, but very smooth leaves overall to the touch. Alright, here we have Northern Catawba. So Northern Catawba has opposite or whorled leaf arrangement, so opposite or whorled. And this is one of our leaves that's heart-shaped, Northern Catawba. They'll get quite large, as you can see. There's some pubescence along the petiole and very velvety on the underside of the leaf especially, but huge heart-shaped leaf. Again, whorled or opposite in arrangement. Here we have Royal Paulownia, also called Empress Tree, Paulownia tomentosa. Tomentosa though, so you can see extremely tomentose or very pubescent. Petioles, actually the entire leaf, just super pubescent, very velvety to the touch. This has large, actually quite large heart-shaped leaves. Sometimes you'll have a lobe, like you can see here, occasionally, but typically heart-shaped, okay? And some of these leaves will just be gigantic, like elephant ear gigantic, especially on young trees reaching out for sunlight. But once trees mature, this is pretty typical on leaf size. Extremely heavily pubescent, much more so than Catawba. To bring Catawba back in, you can see in comparison, it's more perfectly heart-shaped with a smoother and entire margin. No additional lobes like you could see on some of the Paulownia margins. Here's a leaf you might confuse with black gum. This is silverbell, but silverbell leaves have a finely serrate margin, so check for that. Black gum had a smooth margin. Persimmon's going to have a smooth margin or an entire margin. This one is finely serrate. But the shape is a lot like a black gum. As you can see here, the veination is fairly similar. If you flip over silverbell, very velvety or pubescent on the underside. So again, check for that. The pubescence or velvety underside with a serrate margin on these simple alternate leaves for silverbell. Alright, here we have Tulip Poplar or Yellow Poplar, and you can see it has simple leaves alternately arranged on the stem. It has a cat's face shaped leaf, so shaped kind of like a cat's face, and you can see multiple lobes with a smooth margin, but each of those lobes come to a sharp point. Some people say it's got tulip shaped leaves, but I see a cat's face here. Very smooth or glabrous overall, dark green above, pale green below. Alright, here we have American Sycamore. It has simple leaves, alternate leaf arrangement. This is new growth. Again, we're at May 2nd, so these leaves are not fully developed, but usually it'll have 3 to 5 lobes. This one has 3, but 3 to 5 lobes, coarsely toothed. Palmate veination, pretty easy leaf to identify. You can see the velvety kind of pubescence on the underside of the leaf, on the petiole, and then if you pull the leaf off, the petiole where it touches meets the twig is actually hollow and covers up the bud. Alright, here we have another American sycamore. The leaves, though, are a little bit larger on this specimen. So, a little bit better example here. Again, though, sycamore leaves will get even larger than this, 5-7 inches long. Extremely wide, though. Almost as wide as it is long. This one has 3 lobes. Again, very coarsely toothed. Alright. May even appear star-shaped if you have 5 lobes and one that's fully developed. Here we have Tree of Heaven, Ailanthus, and you can see pinnately compound leaves. One thing that really jumps out at me, though, is if you look at the base of the leaves, these small lobes, you'll have these little glands that are present. Okay. Otherwise, it might look like smooth sumac, but of course, the twig will help you separate those two. But look for those glands there at the base of those lobes. Here we have Tree of Heaven again, but as I pulled it out of the bag, you could really smell that burnt kind of peanut butter odor. So remember to crush the leaves or leaflets. Check for that. And with this one, you can see even on the upper side, and especially the underside, those glands again. Alright, here we have American Hornbeam with simple leaves, alternate leaf arrangement on American Hornbeam. You can see this jagged edge, so finely serrate edge, just very prominent for hornbeam and hop hornbeam. Okay, notice the base lines up pretty well here for hornbeam, but for the most part, glossy or smooth leaf. Okay, paler underside, but for the most part, smooth. American Hornbeam. Okay, here we have Eastern Hop Hornbeam. Eastern Hop Hornbeam, the leaves are simple, they're alternately arranged. The base lines up on the Hop Hornbeam. It's in the family Betulaceae. But you'll notice that jagged edge there. Right, finely serrate margin, very prominent, easy to spot. A little bit difficult to separate from American Hornbeam. Typically the leaves, though, with Eastern Hop Hornbeam are going to be a little bit larger and somewhat velvety, especially on the underside. So check for that. Maybe some pubescence along the veins, the midrib and the veins on the underside, creating that more pubescent or velvety texture. This is going to be an easy one. American Holly, extremely thick leaves that are simple, alternately arranged with these spine tips. So spine-tipped teeth here, very sharp. They'll get you. That actually hurt a little bit. You can see glossy, dark green above, and then pale green below, but very glossy, very thick, leathery leaves. Alright, here we have Callery pear, also known as Bradford pear, and you can see the glossy, simple leaves here. Simple leaves, alternately arranged, very glossy, especially above, pale below, pale green below. And look for the finely serrated margin. Here we have sourwood. Sourwood has simple leaves, alternately arranged, with a finely serrate margin or ciliate margin. If you look real close, it almost looks like hairs coming off the margin there. And then if you look at the shape, you can see typically it's longer and narrow, but then flip that over. The midrib, you can see little hairs along the midrib, or little hooks along the midrib of sourwood. Also, it's sour to taste. You can actually eat sourwood leaves, but if you like sour things, they're pretty tasty. And then pinnate veination for the most part on sourwood. Simple, alternate leaf arrangement. Look for the ciliate margin and those hairs on the back of the midrib. Here we have black gum. It's not fully developed, but still you got all the shapes and characteristics you need here for black gum. Simple leaves, alternately arranged. Think about chewing gum. So black gum, the tip, they call that acuminate, but really it looks like you've taken your fingers and just kind of squeezed the tip like chewing gum, pulled it out just a little bit farther on black gum. If you notice the margin, it's an entire margin. And then if you look at the back, you might find some pubescence along the midrib, but very little. For the most part, it's glabrous or smooth. But with these perfectly almost oval leaves that are simple, that end with that acuminate tip. Again, like chewing gum, you just kind of pull that out a little bit. It really stands out, and it has a slight curve to it usually too. This is black gum again. I just should point out again this acuminate tip, or kind of like the black gum, like chewing gum, pulling that tip out, but really balloon shaped. I didn't mention that, but extremely or almost balloon shaped, as you can see. Narrow here at the base, and then it balloons out. Okay, here we have common persimmon. Has simple alternate leaf arrangement. These are not fully developed, so they'll get a little bit larger, typically 3 to 5 inches in length. But you'll notice the shape is kind of like a spoon or oval shape. Comes to somewhat of a sharp point, acuminate tip, so somewhat sharp point. Later, as these develop, they'll oftentimes have little black spots or what appears to be bruising on the leaves. But again, simple leaves, alternately arranged with a smooth or an entire margin. The tip is not as extreme as black gum. The shape is a little more perfect than black gum, but definitely a tree to compare it to. Alright, here we have a compound leaf, similar to black locust, but this is honey locust, with a finely serrate margin. Notice the leaflets are not perfectly oval in shape in comparison to black locust. You can see they're long and skinny, but neatly arranged. Honey locust, pretty easy tree to identify based on the leaves. Alright, here we have compound leaves, alternately arranged, but notice these perfectly oval leaflets for black locust. So this is black locust. I've got a little bit of the twig left, so you can feel those spines. Check for those, but perfectly oval, about 1.5 to 2 inch leaflets are going to give this one away, black locust. Alright, here we have Pignut Hickory, and Pignut Hickory has compound leaves, alternately arranged, with a thin petiole, but very smooth. No pubescence on the petiole, very smooth and thin. And typically Pignut Hickory will have 5 leaflets, almost always 5, with a finely serrate margin. Alright, we have Mockernut Hickory. Has compound leaves that are alternately arranged. If you look at the rachis on Mockernut Hickory, it's heavily pubescent. Each of these leaflets have a serrate margin, or is coarsely toothed. Typically it'll have 7 leaflets. This one has 5. Some may even have 9. Okay, here we have Shagbark Hickory. Finely serrate margin on shagbark. This one's not fully developed. When they are fully developed, usually the terminal leaf, which is the one at the top, it'll be pretty large, much larger than the other leaflets. So again, the terminal leaflet will be pretty large once it's fully developed, much larger than those other leaflets. Typically too, this is a compound leaf. 5 leaflets is what you're going to find most of the time with Shagbark Hickory. So 5 leaflets, a smooth petiole, alternate leaf arrangement. Okay, here we have a simple leaf, alternate arrangement. You'll notice the pinnate veination. if you follow each vein up, you can see a bristle tip. So this is in the same family as oaks, Fagaceae. We have American chestnut. So American chestnut, just the perfect tree that's now almost non-existent. But either way, simple leaves, alternate arrangement with the bristle tips. It's going to be a giveaway for this one. For the most part, very smooth leaf, glabrous, and that includes the twig, the buds, and the leaf. Extremely glabrous. Okay, here we have American basswood, cordate shape, cordate base here, but really heart-shaped overall. One side does not align or is not symmetrical with the other side typically, with a overall smooth leaf. If you compare it to red mulberry would be scabrous above or sandpapery above. This one's overall smooth to the touch. Finely serrate margin here on American basswood. Very smooth petioles and twigs. Should be a pretty easy one to identify. I didn't mention with mulberry, but mulberry, if you tear the leaf off, will exude a milky sap. Looks kind of like glue. This one, if you tear the leaf off, it will not exude the milky sap. Okay, see we got a little friend here hanging out, but we have red mulberry, and red mulberry has a cordate shaped leaf, actually just heart shaped if you want to think of it in simplistic terms, with a coarsely toothed margin, sandpapery or scabrous above, and then velvety below. Alright, so sandpapery on top, velvety below. Big heart-shaped leaves. These are not fully developed, so they'll get quite large. Another thing you might notice this time of year, you can see flowers that will eventually become fruit. And then with red mulberry, you'll have a variety of leaf shapes. Sometimes like so, just the heart-shaped leaf. Sometimes like a catcher's mitt with one extra lobe, so 2 lobes. And then sometimes with 3 lobes. Red mulberry. Alright, we have red mulberry. Again, just want to point out the rough leaves. Very thick, heart-shaped for the most part, but this one you can see the variation with 2 lobes, catcher's mitt, 3 lobes with this one. So be prepared for the variability in the leaves with red mulberry. Okay, here we have American basswood, cordate shape, cordate base here, but really heart-shaped overall. One side does not align or is not symmetrical with the other side typically, with a overall smooth leaf. If you compare it to red mulberry would be scabrous above or sandpapery above. This one's overall smooth to the touch. Finely serrate margin here on American basswood. Very smooth petioles and twigs. Should be a pretty easy one to identify. I didn't mention with mulberry, but mulberry, if you tear the leaf off, will exude a milky sap. Looks kind of like glue. This one, if you tear the leaf off, it will not exude the milky sap. Alright, this is Silky Dogwood. It has simple leaves, and each leaf has arcuate venation, so you can see the veins actually curve upward toward the tip, or the apex, but oppositely arranged. So that's going to help you out with dogwood. Opposite arrangement, simple leaves, arcuate venation, and with Silky Dogwood you can see the red twigs and the telescope-like growth. Here we have flowering dogwood. You can see the opposite leaf arrangement, simple leaves. The arcuate venation really stands out, again, as the veins kind of arch their way up toward the tip. Okay, oval in shape, coming to a sharp point. The twigs for flowering dogwood have that telescopic-like growth. Typically are going to be greenish or mottled green. But again, simple leaves, oppositely arranged, arcuate venation, flowering dogwood. Here we have downy serviceberry, simple leaves, alternate leaf arrangement. The twigs are thin and small. Let's see, the leaves also are fairly small, 2 to 3 inches in length, but notice the perfectly kind of finely serrate margin here. So finely toothed margin, almost perfect all the way around. Somewhat oval in shape, coming to a sharp tip, but kind of oval in shape, more rounded here. Simple leaves, fairly easy to identify. If you flip them over, you'll see some pubescence along the midrib and along the petiole. Paler below with a pubescence there, so look for that. Downy serviceberry has the downy hairs along the midrib. Here we have Eastern Redbud, simple leaves, alternately arranged, heart-shaped. You can see the cordate base here. A smooth or entire margin. A pretty easy one to ID. The petiole will be somewhat flattened, so check for that, but very smooth or entire margin. Perfectly heart-shaped Eastern Redbud. Here we have Eastern Redbud, simple leaves, alternately arranged, heart-shaped. You can see the cordate base here. A smooth or entire margin. A pretty easy one to ID. The petiole will be somewhat flattened, so check for that, but very smooth or entire margin. Perfectly heart-shaped Eastern Redbud. Alright, here we have green ash. Both green ash and white ash have opposite leaf arrangement, compound leaves. Again, like hickory, but oppositely arranged. And if you look at ash, sometimes you'll have an entire margin, sometimes it will have a serrate margin. So that just depends. But yeah, compound leaves, oppositely arranged. For this class, we're not going to separate by leaves the various fraxinus species, so we'll just go with it as ash. Here we have American elm, and the elms are all the trees in Ulmaceae, the family Ulmaceae. The bases are inequilateral, so they don't line up exactly straight, as you can see there. Plus, it has a doubly serrate margin. Right, and American elm is going to be scabrous or sandpapery on top, and then generally smooth or fuzzy on the bottom. But simple leaves, alternately arranged with an inequilateral base. And look for those sharply, doubly serrate teeth. Alright, we have slippery elm, simple leaves, alternately arranged. You can see the inequilateral base. The base doesn't line up exactly right for Ulmaceae. You can see the coarsely sharp teeth there that are doubly serrate. So look for the doubly serrate margin for slippery elm. American and slippery elm have larger leaves, 3 to 5 inches long typically. For slippery elm though, it's not slippery at all. It's sandpapery on both sides, the upper side and the underside. It's scabrous or sandpapery, much more so on the top versus the bottom of the leaf. All right, here we have another elm, but the leaves are smaller. This is winged elm, and winged elm leaves are typically about 2 inches long. This one's not fully developed, but this is typical of what you'll see, about 2-inch long leaves, doubly serrate margin, inequilateral base. It's not scabrous like American elm or slippery elm for the most part. But again, leaves, each leaf will be about the same length once it's fully developed, about 2 inches long, with a doubly serrate margin, inequilateral base. Here we have hackberry. Hackberry's in the family Ulmaceae. So with Ulmaceae, you can see inequilateral base. Maybe not as obvious as American elm, slippery elm, and winged elm, but definitely an inequilateral base. That one's more obvious there. So look for that. You'll notice the base of the leaf is generally entire or smooth, and then about a third way up, you'll start with these coarse teeth. So coarsely toothed all the way up to the tip, comes to a sharp point. Another thing with hackberry leaves is you'll notice 3 distinct veins that originate at the base. So 1, 2, 3 kind of main veins that originate at the base on hackberry. We have box elder, and box elder is often confused with poison ivy. So you can see the poison ivy like leaflets, but this does have compound leaves, oppositely arranged. 3 to 5 leaflets are most common. Occasionally they'll have 7. But especially when the tree is young, maybe when you have a seedling or a sapling, folks will confuse it with poison ivy. But it's box elder. Alright, we've got black cherry, simple leaf, alternately arranged. You can see finely serrate margin here. Very neat, but finely serrate. Okay. If you look close, on these petioles you'll see little glands. So look for that. Look at those glands on the petioles. They're kind of inconspicuous, I guess you could say. Generally a smooth, very glossy upper side, and then the underside, if you flip it over, is pale green, but also look for the pubescence along the midrib. You can see this one has white pubescence. Some will have orange, even brown pubescence along the midrib. Here we have American beech. American beech has a smooth, shiny leaf, simple leaf, alternately arranged. If you notice, it has pinnate veination, and if you follow the vein up, it'll end with a tooth right here. So just follow each vein up, and it'll end in a perfect little tooth. So coarsely toothed or serrate margin, American beech. Alright, we have an oak here. This is Chinquapin Oak. It looks kind of like Chestnut Oak, but Chinquapin Oak has these little teeth here at the end of each lobe. So a somewhat wavy margin, but it's not rounded lobes because each margin ends in a tooth. Simple leaves, alternately arranged. Chinquapin Oak is in the white oak group. Some fine pubescence on the underside, especially along the midrib, but this one, based on the margin, should be easy to identify. Here we have an oak leaf, simple leaves, alternate arrangement. This one has a wavy margin though, but each wavy margin is rounded, so this is Chestnut Oak. Chestnut Oak. If you remember, Chinquapin Oak has a little tooth tip on each margin. This one's just wavy overall. This one's not fully developed, so the leaves will be 5 to 7 inches long. On Chestnut Oak, typically once fully developed, but the wavy margin, very narrow at the base, and then it just kind of blows out, or extends out very wide, kind of like a balloon in shape. Here we have white oak, Quercus alba. So white oak, you can see variation between these two. Lots of variation, variable leaves with white oak. But typically, if you count the lobes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 to 11 lobes. Just depends. Again, lots of variation. Sometimes, though, the sinuses are quite shallow and only go about a third way to the mid-vein. Sometimes they'll go fairly deep, almost all the way to the mid-vein here. So real deep sinuses on that one. The lobes are rounded and finger-like. You might be able to see that. So rounded, finger-like lobes on Quercus alba. Alright, here we've got an oak with simple leaves, alternately arranged. And this is one of the white oaks, post oak. So post oak does not have bristle tips. It has rounded lobes. And then if you look, this one's not fully developed by any means. I mean, these leaves will be as large as your hand. But notice these 2 middle lobes are square in shape. And this leaf looks like a crucifix or the cross. Again, post oak, Quercus stellata. Some pubescence, velvety underneath, but the square shape, middle lobes, and the crucifix shape is going to give this one away. Alright, we have northern red oak, simple leaves, alternately arranged. With your red oaks, or all the species in the red oak group, you can see the bristle tips right? And then with northern red oak, you can see this one, the sinuses are fairly deep, about halfway to the mid vein, and very uniform. This too is a northern red oak, but the sinuses are only about a third way to the mid vein, but still very uniform in shape. All right, here we have southern red oak. Southern red oak, this one's not fully developed, but you can see simple leaves alternately arranged on this oak. It's in the red oak group with bristle tips. Okay, and then if you look, the rounded base. That's going to be a dead giveaway. So with that rounded base, occasionally it'll have 3 lobes, which some people say looks like a turkey's foot, right? Sorry, turkey foot. And then southern bell, so bell-shaped leaves, so like a southern bell with that rounded base. Pretty easy red oak to identify by the leaves. Here we have water oak. Water oak has simple leaves, alternately arranged, and water oak, if you notice, has spatula-shaped leaves. But extreme variation, or a lot of variability here with each individual leaf. So lots of variability. Sometimes like this one with 3 lobes, sometimes 2, sometimes none, no lobes. But lots of variation, but look for the few leaves or a lot of leaves that might have that spatula shape. And water oak is in the red oak group, so you'll see each lobe ends with a bristle tip. Water oak. Okay, here's an oak with willow-like leaves, the willow oak, Quercus phalos. You can see the long skinny leaf though, that ends in a bristle tip. So this is in the red oak group. Simple leaves, alternately arranged. Pretty easy to identify though. And I'm just studying these margins here. But for the most part, an entire margin, okay, with that one bristle tip on the end. Willow-like leaves, willow oak. Here we have scarlet oak. Scarlet oak will have red petioles oftentimes. And this is the one with the very deep sinuses. They almost touch the mid vein here. So really deep sinuses, and each of those lobes end in a bristle tip. So scarlet oak is in the red oak group, and you can see fairly symmetrical for the most part. Maybe not as much as northern red, but again those deep sinuses will separate it out, and you can see they're U-shaped. If you hold them up to your head, then you can actually, with your 2 eyes, you can see around those sinuses. So you can put it up to your face like a mask. Here we have red maple. And our maples, as you know, have opposite leaf arrangement. See that? Notice on red maple, sometimes it'll have a red petiole. So that's helpful. A red petiole on red maple. And then these simple, oppositely arranged leaves. With red maple, they have a serrate margin, kind of a jagged edge there you can see. If you look at the sinus is V-shaped, shaped like a V, not a U. If you fold over the central lobe, okay, it won't quite reach the base of the leaf for red maple. All right, here we have red maple. Again, just want to point this one out. This one has 3 lobes rather than 5 lobes, and this one is a wetland indicator, red maple. It's Acer rubrum trilobum. So definitely a wetland indicator with 3 lobes when you see that, the rounded base. So both are red maple. All right, here we have a tree with simple leaves but oppositely arranged. Okay. And then this is one of our maples. This is actually silver maple, which has a serrate margin, so coarsely toothed margin, and then very deep sinuses, really deep sinuses. And if you take the central lobe here and you fold it over perfectly, like so, then it'll extend beyond the base of the leaf. Plus the underside is silvery, so silver maple. All right, here we have the leaf you'll find on the Canadian flag. This is sugar maple. You can see opposite leaf arrangement, simple leaf. With sugar maple, the margin is going to be entire. So a smooth margin, not serrate like the others, red maple, silver maple, etc. So smooth margin, typically 5 lobes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll notice the sinus is shaped like a U, so a U-shaped sinus. Think sugar, S-U-G-A-R, so U-shaped sinuses. If you fold over the central lobe, it'll generally meet the leaf base or line up with the leaf base on sugar maple. Alright, here we have a simple leaf alternately arranged, witch hazel. And witch hazel has kind of a wavy margin, as you can see here. The base is inequilateral, and the two sides are not exactly symmetrical. Okay. But for the most part, that wavy margin, simple leaf, inequilateral base, okay, and then the asymmetrical sides should help you to figure this one out. Here we've got one of our favorites and one of the easiest trees to learn, sassafras, at least based on the leaves. You can see a single leaf here, 1 lobe, 2-lobed leaf, and then 3-lobed leaf you'll find on sassafras. This one looks kind of like a catcher's mitt. Here's the 3 lobes. If you crush these leaves, they're very fragrant, smell kind of like fruity fragrance, like Fruit Loops or something along those lines. And kind of a soft, somewhat velvety leaf overall. Simple, alternately arranged. That'll be an easy one for you. Here we have compound leaf, alternate leaf arrangement. This is winged sumac. It's called winged sumac because you can see these leafy wings along the rachis. So that'll make this one really easy to identify. Each leaflet too has an entire or smooth margin, so pay attention to that, along with those leafy appendages or wings here along the rachis. It's also referred to as shining sumac because when you get it out in the sunlight, the top of the leaflets just kind of glisten with the sunshine. So winged sumac. Alright, here we have smooth sumac with the pinnately compound leaves, alternate leaf arrangement. You can see the margin though is serrate or coarsely toothed instead of the entire or smooth margin of winged sumac in comparison. And then it does not have the leafy wings like winged sumac. The rachis is very stout, generally red and stout and smooth. Smooth sumac. Another thing is it doesn't really have the prominent glands at the base of the lobes like you'll see with Tree of Heaven. Here we have sweet gum. Sweet gum has a simple leaf, alternately arranged. You can see it's coarsely toothed or serrate, but this one's star-shaped. Typically you can count these lobes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oftentimes we'll have 5 lobes. Star-shaped leaf though, pretty easy one for leaf ID. Alright, here we have a tree with simple leaves, alternately arranged, and you'll notice the doubly serrate margin, but it's finely serrated. Finely serrated. And then the base is somewhat flat, and to me it looks like an arrowhead, where like a Native American chipped away on some flint there. So arrowhead-shaped leaves. River birch. Alright, we're going to end with a woody vine. You can see this is Vitus. This is a grape vine. There are different species of grape, but you'll notice with this one, that cordate base, kind of a heart-shaped leaf, coarsely toothed overall. Young grape leaves will sometimes have deep sinuses and be 3 to 5 lobes, so be prepared for that. But again, that's on young leaves, but then once they're fully developed, they'll usually take on this kind of appearance here, more heart-shaped leaves overall. Some are more like a sycamore in shape, but then very pubescent and velvety underneath on the underside of these leaves. So grapevine. And here you can see leftover tendrils where this was climbing on another plant.